Hello, this is Sterling here. So I have a quick question for you. Does your church organization, your church nonprofit, congregation or assembly have financial reserves? Are you not living sort of month to month, but do you have money in savings or even money in long-term investments? Do your members or the folks that parishioners and those that attend your church community and your religious community have those kind of investments? Well, if so, then keep listening on. I have a resource that you may find interesting. If you said yes to that last question, then I have a podcast I would like to share with you. I came across this podcast. It's been going since 2018, and it's from the folks at socialcapitalmarkets.net, or SOCAP. And this podcast sort of deals primarily, or sort of their focus and sort of where they start is this thing called impact investing. And what is impact investing? Well, it's really sort of like, according to like Wikipedia, and I'm going to borrow their definition here. It's when you want to invest your resources, your savings, your reserves, or whatever, into companies and organizations and funds with the intention to generate a measurable, beneficial social or environmental impact, alongside with a financial return, right? So you want both the social benefit or the environmental benefit as well as the financial return, right? And this can be anywhere from the right kind of businesses or companies or certain kinds of mutual funds or funds and the like, to like, do you bank at an organization like a credit union or some other kind of financial institution, bank-like institution that reinvests their money back into their local community? Okay, so what does this have to do with sort of church and church life? Okay, this, first and foremost, this podcast is called Money+Meaning. It's Money+Meaning. Again, it's been going since 2018. If you dig into this thing, I think you'll find the conversations that they have pretty useful for ideas on what's possible, okay? And you won't necessarily get into like how to do these things, right? So what does this mean for your congregation? Like, let's imagine this could be a stewardship thing. You could think about this as individuals, right? What could individual members of your congregation do? Alternatively, let's say you have a mission or a ministry or some other idea that you are looking at, and you're thinking about funding this in some way beyond our typical sort of donation and tithes, right? You're thinking about some sort of earned income strategy or something like that. This is the kind of thing that this kind of podcast can give you some really interesting ideas on how to approach that. Again, it's really much a starting point in your learning, and from there, then you can go and explore other things, right? So I think these conversations are pretty useful for ideas on what's possible, but again, it won't give you specifics on necessarily how to do that. And that's okay. You probably really need to talk to, there's some legal stuff, and you're going to need to do some discernment work and things like that. I should be really clear also that the language of this podcast is really focused on that sort of impact investing kind of deal, right? So thinking about social good or environmental good or things like that, right? So the language of this podcast is really secular. It's like social enterprise plus nonprofit speak plus a combination with capitalism, investment market kind of stuff, okay? So their goal is to advance what is good and what is just in the world, but as a leader in a Christian congregation, you're going to need to do the discernment work and the theological work and the study and the discussions, really, to sort of build the theology. They're not going to provide that, right? This podcast isn't put into church language, is another way to say that, and that's probably okay. And that's okay. It's just you're going to have to do that translation. I really want to sort of, where do you get started? If this thing's been going from 2018, it's now 2020, where do you start? Well, I would recommend 4 episodes. Okay? The first episode I want to recommend for you is from July 14th of 2020 of this year. It is August 4th when I'm recording this. So it's called How to Start Impact Investing. For everything I just said about this isn't really going to give you like all the how-tos. In fact, this podcast does a pretty good job of the how-tos. And what's exciting about this episode is that it can really sort of show you how it's possible to not only as a congregation say, man, we have this chunk of reserves, what are we doing with that? And are we making sure that we're investing in things that match our theology and match our convictions as a congregation, right? I know, maybe folks are not comfortable with investing in gambling or, I don't know, fast food restaurants or any other kinds of, or fossil fuels or any other kinds of thing. I'm not making judgment on those, but sort of what is that community, if they really thought about it, how do they express their discipleship through the things they invest? What good do they want to see in the world to the companies they invest in? Okay, and that is again for each individual community. But that's there, and that's exciting. And this could also be again shared back with individual congregants. Stewardship. I don't know. Like being a Christian, we like to sort of have our private little bubbles, and maybe money stuff is between God and the parishioner, and that's true and all. But part of our discipleship, it does go deeper. It goes a lot deeper into again, what do you use your money for, and sort of what fruits is your money producing? So, folks have retirement funds and savings and things like that, and this could sort of maybe give you a spark, an idea, on like sort of a ministry or a workshop or something to do with your community around those things. So I would like to start there. If you want bonus, if you really want to sort of get some like what is sort of really crazy and really possible out there, maybe not crazy, I want to encourage three other episodes. There's one called TechSoup's Direct Public Offering. So it talks about the nonprofit TechSoup, and they have an earned income strategy in addition to their donations and the like, and they end up being able to sort of offer sort of like securities out to help raise some of the capital they need to expand their mission, expand their work, and they're a nonprofit. That is something that may be possible with the Christian community. Another one is called Building Community Wealth with Cooperatives. What's exciting about that one, it looks at like, again, there are different cooperatives. Like imagine we've probably heard of these things where folks have had food pantries that have turned into like grocery cooperatives, but it doesn't have to be just groceries. Like there's other kinds of cooperatives out there, right? That seems very, very New Testament Acts kind of way with a sort of cooperative model. And it's also really focused on the community, and that can give you some ideas. And then a third one, and that's, so the TechSoup's Direct Public Offering is from January 27th of 2020. Building Community Wealth with Cooperatives is from July 19th of 2019. And then the last one I want to recommend is something called Democratizing Community Development. It's from March 26th of 2019. And it's how this organization, that organization that is being interviewed, end up doing community development in a way that, in a very really challenging community, in a very democratic way, where the community was really invested in it, where they talked about how they structure sort of voting on what businesses gets invested in and what community. And imagine if your congregation's in a challenged place, congregations can be aggregators, just as like nonprofits can be sort of aggregators of wealth, not yet wealth, but aggregators of money and resources for the tax rate, and can be a point where you could do something like that. Again, it's complex, but it's sort of spark your imagination. If the Holy Spirit is saying that you could do some things, you could participate in God's work in that particular way, your congregation, your Christian community, then these are some ways to sort of say, wow, that is actually possible. We can actually do those things. That's where I would start. Hope you find this useful. There'll be links down below on where you can find this podcast. You could find it on their website. You can also, I know you can find it on the Apple podcasting app or iTunes, and I'm sure you can find it in other places like Stitcher and things like that. And I think if this is where you're headed and you want to learn more about this, a very interesting podcast to engage. Okay, God bless.